The two Jills, a psychologist and psychic intuitive, reveal mind-blowing insights that turn psychology, self-help, and conscious teachings on their heads. Why? Because they work. Real help, sincere growth is here. Welcome to Psyched.
With the Psyched podcast, the main reason that we wanted to do this is that we help people every day in ways that blows their minds. These are people that are very educated and very astute in self-help, personal wellness, psychology, philosophy, spirituality, consciousness, religion. I mean, these are individuals that hear something different and new and more useful than what they had been trying. So that's why we're doing this. We're not intending to repeat other things that everybody already knows, and we're definitely not going to repeat things that we know don't work. So I thought it would be useful in this episode to do our origin stories. So Jill, what is your sense of what makes you this person that gives amazing wisdom that blows people's minds to help them be a better them or help them better understand the world, etc.?
Well, thank you for saying that, Jill, actually. Okay, so I think the backstory is kind of important just for context, because at each phase of my life, I was using different tools to get me out of whatever, stuck situation I felt myself in. And so my journey began, honestly, when I was in my 20s, and I had been having panic attacks since the age of 7. Completely undiagnosed. Psychology was not a big part of early life. In my home, it was pull yourself up by your bootstraps and keep going. And at a certain point in my 20s, I feel like I hit a wall. And at that point, I went to a doctor, and the doctor said, "You don't need me. You need a shrink." And that was my introduction to psychology. So at that point, that's what I did. I went and I studied everything I could study. I got a PhD. And that's what I did. Fast forward, after I had my children, I got cancer. And that really knocked me for a loop. And from that, I started, interestingly, to go from the mind and to come back into the body. And I had to figure out now how to heal this body. And I joke that I went from cancer to kale to psychology and beyond, because all of these steps were very important. You can't almost skip to the end of the book. You have to live your life and sort of go through these steps. So that's kind of what happened to me. So I studied nutrition and how I could heal myself through the body. But then at a certain point, I got cancer again. And that's when I started to understand that there was more, that I had reached the limits of what psychology could offer. I reached the limits of what food, diet, nutrition could offer. And that's when I'll say my idea of going beyond psychology, that's what I call it now. In my journey, I will say that I learned that anxiety was not an illness and it wasn't chronic, which I had never known before. That was beyond the psychology that I was taught. That was a big game changer for me. I learned that the reason that I couldn't bounce back emotionally from my cancers was because my brain had ideas about where I was going. It was looking into my future, and I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And honestly, it was killing me. And so I started to understand that I needed to change up what was in my head. It wasn't so much about dealing with the body anymore. And my brain, I just became curious about it. I'm not there to bash it. We obviously need our brain. The brain is a beautiful organ. There's a symbiosis there that we are supposed to work with. But once I started finding my way out of these things that were heretofore intractable, that's when I wanted to share this with people. And a lot of it is about teaching people how their brains are working normally, how people who are anxious are not weak. They're the strongest people I know. Just shifting everything that psychology kind of taught me and just shifting it around a little bit. So I don't have a mental illness, and a lot of people are moving away from mental illness, obviously, but there's no diagnosis happening. To me, you are fine. And we can work with whatever's showing up. It's not a character flaw. It's not a weakness. It's not damage. It's not permanently broken. And so there's always a way in, right? And that's what we're looking for. That's why we're here, to sort of find the way in.
Jill, I love how that's one of the many overlaps that you and I have, is we're looking for what is working within a client or a friend or a loved one, is what is high functioning there. And it's almost like wanting to support and help them build upon that. As beings that care about other beings, we're interested in that, but we're starting with what works, is my point. And I have heard you disagree with the field of psychology in a very thoughtful, wise, and intuitive, way that, oh yeah, that doesn't work. And you know why it doesn't work. And you know something that works better. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've always loved doing my conversations about something. If we're talking about world affairs or politics or social problems or personal challenges that either we are facing or another one is facing, you have amazing insights that can be very contrarian to some of the most acknowledged experts on the planet, right? And those fields of study. I really appreciate your originality. I love your wit. I love how quick you are with words and how talented you are with communication. It just, you have a way of putting things that makes me smile and makes me laugh and makes me feel informed in an incredible way. I just appreciate you so much.
Well, I appreciate that, Jill. I appreciate you too. So that is the backstory. I have 3 grown children, and I have a husband for a long time. I like him, and he is my soulmate, and that's my backstory. What about you, Jill? We need to hear your backstory. What's going on?
Mine feels so weird, because I don't even understand how I got to the Jill I am today. But for me, the catalyst, I guess this does fit. I have a background in business. I majored in economics and finance. I got my MBA, and I was very competitive with myself in corporate. I worked for Hewlett Packard. That was my dream company, but I worked for a bank before that. Right out of college, I worked for a hospital. Being a financial analyst in a not-for-profit was very strange to me, but it was very interesting. And with that competitive nature of myself, if somebody said, yeah, normally somebody's in this position for 2 years, I'm like, but can I get promoted in 9 months? And that did happen. I got promotions like every 9 months when I was at Hewlett Packard. And everybody was like, no, that doesn't happen. I'm like, well, if I can do that job and I've already added value to the job, why can't I go for it? So anyway, I did well. And as we had the kids, so I have 2 kids. We have a 20-year-old right now and a 17-year-old, very similar ages to yours, Jill, and a husband. We've been together since 1988. We got married in 1993. We've been together a long time, and I like him as well. The kids were young. I think Georgia was like 2 and our oldest V was like 5. And I was literally thinking about leaving my part-time perfect corporate gig that gave me time with the kiddos to become a CEO of a startup green company. And that, from an identity competitive, can I do it? Can I do that well too? Kind of drive in me. That was literally like, oh my God, that could be really cool, right? That was the trajectory my headspace was on. And I'm a very type A person. We were hosting an event, and like a Father's Day gathering or something. I take details really seriously. So I'm sure I drove my family. I know I drove my family crazy, like the 24 hours before, because I wanted everything perfect. And that perfection is ridiculous as a goal, but to a type A person, you're trying to get as close to that as you can, not even caring how miserable you might be or making others in the process. Like, I just cleaned that, just obsessive, just rude, and not the me I like to be, because they didn't even know me that way. They're like, They're probably thinking we're hosting the Father's Day gathering. Okay, here goes mom. We're one day, we're pre-event day. Here she goes. Let's just stay out of her way, right? Anyway, so my sister-in-law comes over and for that event, and we were in the kitchen together getting something to bring outside to the others. And she said, "You look like more stressed than usual. What's going on?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm trying to, if I want to be the CEO of the screen company." And she goes, "Oh, you should go see my psychic." There was nothing in my energy field. I was interested, appreciative of any of what she just said. And I was like, yeah, thanks, Julie. And I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, no, that's dumb. You know what I mean? And yet, literally a couple of days later, I was almost like doing a qualitative cost benefit analysis in my head, because that's how I use this brain, of, well, what is the risk? And what is, we don't know the reward, but the risk is actually low, right? From just going to hear what her psychic has to say about whether I should do this thing or not, because I was indecisive. So I said, yes, I reached out to her and I said, okay, yeah, I'll go see your psychic. And this psychic, totally not my world, knew what I was going for. She wasn't trying to guess that. That's not the kind of psychic she is. She said, well, let's meditate and we'll just see what happens. And I'll try to make a long story short, but she said, I know you're here, after we meditated together, which I didn't know what that was. So I just sat there and had one eye open, wondering what the hell she was doing. She said, well, Jill, I know you're here to figure out a business decision, but what I'm getting, and I'm getting those goosebumps. She said, what I'm getting is that anyone can be the CEO of that green company. You're the only one that can be the mother to your daughters. Mm. Oh my God. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh God. I hate it when I cry and get like this. That was exactly what I needed to hear. And I'm still embarrassed that I needed that reminder, Jill. But holy shit, I did. I totally would have gone there. I still would be completely driven by these, corporate challenges and the chess moves of a corporate climber, and not trying to harm anybody else, but just seeing, it's a personal challenge thing. It's probably not that different than CrossFit. Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do that? Can I do that? Can I do that? And you keep, if you're good, you keep doing better. Where's my limit? Maybe we don't have one. I don't know. But anyway, that process is structured enough to be super interesting and satisfying to me as my Jill, right? So I couldn't see the bigger picture, but she could. And that's what she did for me. So that was like one little domino, click. And she's in the rest of our conversation was about a lot of other things that were super useful and insightful, but she wasn't reading my mind. I don't care what she was doing. It was way more useful than I ever would have imagined. And the idea that I do that for people now, 13 years later, blows my mind, right? Because I never would have known I had that in me. I never would have even pursued it had I not been very curious about another way to get insight, get support, receive insight, receive support, and the type of support and insight that's available in this reality that my linear, super strong, very educated mind, my brain would never have seen that.
I love it.
So that's my story. And now I am the CEO of my own company, right? Never.
I absolutely love
it. I don't even care. It's like, that's not the goal.
I love it. I think the backstory is important. I think people, are curious as to what got us here.
Yeah.
And everybody's got a backstory.
I think so too. So I guess I should add that what I realized is that my version of psychic intuition, it maybe is unique when I hear an astrophysicist on a podcast talking about quantum mechanics or quantum theory, or the way that Einsteinian theory of physics and things like that, and how the world is, the universe is like a net and all these things. There's a range of me that has a critique of that and another answer. I've never studied those things before, right? And there are many times when I'm like, and I just hear something on the news or a person, a client, obviously now that they have like, oh yeah, I'm doing this because of that, or we're going to do that to solve this. I'm like, oh yeah, that's not going to work. Why isn't it going to work, Jill? Oh, because of this. And it turns out in so many cases to be exactly true. And when I say it to people, they're like, oh my God. It's literally like that woman for me and her version of it saying, yeah, you could be CEO, but who cares, Jill? Right? It doesn't matter like you think it does, babe. Yeah. So that little reset that I have access to, and anyway, that's.
Yeah, but that's why you blow people's minds, right? I mean, that's really why we're here. That basically says it all. And
I hope.
That's the goal. That's the goal. And we're totally psyched about it.
Very good.
And honestly, one of the things I say this to you all the time about you is that you can ask a question that will disarm the brain in a second. You have this ability to zero in and just target, and like you said, just asking the right question. And then the brain just does its thing. That's the magic, right? That's the magic. We're not trying to force anything. We're not trying to, I don't know. I mean, it's so subtle. It's hard to put to words, right? What we do. And there's a simplicity to it, but it's so direct. It's so targeted. And it's just something, look, that this is why we're doing it. This is why we're doing it. So cool.
So cool. It's already fun.
Yes, I agree.
I'm completely psyched about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I'm glad we did these origin stories because I think it does add so much context to everything that we'll offer in the podcast.
I agree. Love it.
All right, everybody. So we launched the Psyched podcast officially on October 6th, 2022. We will have new episodes every Thursday. And we look forward to interacting with you at psyched.wtf. Yes, I said that correctly. That is what I meant to say. Psyched.wtf. There's lots of dots with letters after them, and ours is WTF. And yes, we know what that means. We're not that old. Find the podcast wherever you enjoy podcasts by searching for the name Psyched. Psyched. Please follow and subscribe, making sure that you turn on the notifications so that you don't miss an episode. Thank you for your support.